Hi, in this lecture, I'm going to talk about the Philippines still, but more specifically, I'm going to talk about the Philippine education system. So, in this lecture, I would like you to understand the Philippine education system and note down why the K-12 program is implemented in the Philippines. And lastly, for you to relate the information that you have gathered in teaching. Because who knows, you might be given the opportunity to come here in the Philippines to teach Filipino students as a part of your community service or as a part of your practice teaching. Then you can understand deeply how we do our education system here in the Philippines. Okay, so first let's talk about our history. Our education system here in the Philippines is actually highly influenced with the people or the colonizers that we had here in the past. As I have lectured in the former videos, I told you about the three colonizers who came here in the Philippines, such as Spain, who colonized us for more than 3 centuries, America for more than 40 years, and Japan for around 3 to 4 years. So these colonizers actually had an influence in the curriculum that we actually have these days here in the Philippines. So even if we already got our independence from them after the Second World War, the Philippines education system still continuously had a reform every now and then. It never stops. So let's see how our basic education system looks like in the past. You can see here in our table that this basic education system that we had was from 1945 until 2011. So for that long period of time, we had kindergarten, which was actually not compulsory. It means it's not mandatory for the learners or children to go to and or attend to kindergarten schools. And we also had 6 years of primary education or elementary level from grades 1 to grade 6. And in that former basic education that we have, we only had 4 years of high school. So if you're going to total our basic education system, it was actually only around 10 years, right? So if you're going to compare it with your education system, in your case, your basic education system is actually around 12 years, right? But in the Philippines, our former basic education system was only 10 years. Now, this is how our current education system looks like. And this was implemented from June 6, 2011 up to the present. So you can see the difference of our former education system and our current education system these days. So these days, they made kindergarten as mandatory. So all of the children before they go to primary level have to undergo or study in the kindergarten level. And then after attending the kindergarten level, the children have to go to the primary education level, the elementary level, and attend from grades 1 to grade 6 before they move on to the higher level, which is junior high school. And we call that and we call them grade 7, 8, 9, and 10. So the junior high school is around 4 years of education plus 2 years of senior high school. So if you notice the grades is actually continuous. So we call them kinder, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and grade 12. So it's kind of like a continuous study from kindergarten until grade 12. Now, if you're going to compute our primary education, our junior high school, and our senior high school, all in all, it's actually 12 years. Plus our kindergarten, which makes it 13 years. So if you will be comparing this one to your education system in your country, it's now the same, isn't it? But there is, of course, a difference. In your country, if I'm not mistaken, instead of junior high school, you just call it as middle school, right? The difference is that in your middle school, you only have 3 years, but in your high school, you also have 3 years, whereas in the Philippines, it's 2 years. But the totality of all is still the same, which is around 12 years, right? So the point there is that the total of basic education system is now similar not only with your country, but also with the basic education system in other countries. Okay, now we actually implement the K-12 program in the Philippines because in the Philippines, it's actually quite late, frankly speaking. And we believe that K to 12 has very big help or highly essential when it comes to the development of the child. And one of the reason we believe is that, and also is based on research, is because it provides sufficient time for the mastery of concepts and skills and to develop lifelong learners and prepare the graduates for their tertiary education, middle level skills, and for their employment in the future and entrepreneurship, just in case they would like to become, businessmen in the future, right? So these are just actually just some of the main reasons on why we implement the K to 12 here in the Philippines. Okay, now I would like you to answer the following questions. How about in your country? Is kindergarten compulsory? Is it mandatory for all of the children to undergo kindergarten in your country? Okay, second question. How many years is your basic education system in your country? Is it 10 years, 12 years, 13 years? And this is my last question for you to think about. We actually just started K to 12 last June 2011, which means that the real graduate of our program, K to 12, will graduate on what year? Okay, I would like you to think about it. So you think 2011 plus 12 years of basic education system? Well, that's the answer. So it means that until now, we are still on the process of completing the first graduates of K to 12 here in the Philippines. So the real graduates of the K to 12 will be actually by next year, right? 2022. So we will see the first graduates by next year. Now, why are we now implementing 12 years of basic education? The first answer there is that the Philippines actually was the last country in Asia and one of the only 3 countries worldwide with a 10-year basic education system. So, in order for us to be globally competitive and to be at par with the countries worldwide, we also need to follow their own system. Another reason is that a 12-year program is found actually to be the best period for learning under basic education. And it is also recognized as a standard for students and professionals globally. So we have this friend of ours who went in other country like Germany. He actually went there to work. However, he was not as an engineer. However, he was actually not taken as a professional engineer. Do you know why? Because he lacks 2 years of basic education program. So the company actually asked him to study 2 more years of education so that he can be the same with the people, the other professional engineers just like him. So the only thing he doesn't have any choice, but in order for him to be globally competitive, he has to study 2 more years. And so he did. Same with my other friends who worked as nurses in Australia and even in other Western countries. They have to finish 2 more years because their basic education lacks 2 more years. Okay. Now, in the K to 12 program, we believe that every graduate will be equipped with the following skills, such as information, media, and technology skills, learning and innovation skills, effective communication skills when it comes to oral and written, of course, in various languages, our official languages such as English and Filipino. And lastly, for them to be equipped with life and career skills. So we believe that after they finish their basic education program, even if they don't have enough money to go to a higher level, the tertiary level, they can be equipped or they have enough knowledge or background knowledge on how they can survive or how they can get a job or work or be employed in our society. Okay. Now, the following are just some of the features of the K 12 program in the Philippines. The first feature is to strengthen the early childhood education, called as the universal kindergarten, because we believe that every Filipino child has actually access to early childhood education through the universal kindergarten. So at the age of 5, children are already going to school and are given the means to slowly adjust to formal education. Now, based on research, children who underwent kindergarten have better completion rates than those who did not finish kindergarten. So, children who complete the standard based kindergarten, according to their observation and research, are much better, okay, are more prepared for the elementary level. In kindergarten, students learn the alphabet, the numbers, shapes, and colors through games, songs, and dances using their own mother tongue. So, in my former lecture, I already told you that in kindergarten, from kindergarten until grade 3, we use our own mother tongue in teaching the children so that they can understand clearly, they can comprehend clearly what they are learning. So, the more that they comprehend, the deeper actually that they learn. In addition to that, uh, we believe that education for children in the early years lays the foundation for lifelong learning and, of course, for the total development of the child, which is the reason why, as you can see in our current education system, this table, you can see that kindergarten is now compulsory, isn't it? So it's now compulsory because we believe that studying in the kindergarten is for the development of the child as a whole. Okay, now let's talk about the next feature of K to 12. The next feature is to make the curriculum relevant to the learners through contextualization and enhancement. How can we do this one? It is by means of using activities, songs, poems, stories, illustrations, and stories which are based on the local culture of the learners, their history, and of course their reality. So whenever we use these kinds of examples, okay, this actually will and surely make the lessons relevant to the learners, making them understand easily what they are learning. So just like our GTU students who came here in the Philippines, whenever they go to the community to have their community education program, we always tell them to make their lessons relevant for the learners in order for them to understand what they are teaching. For instance, one of the topic that they taught is actually about the four seasons. Well, it's actually good for them to know about the four seasons, frankly speaking. However, I told them, look at the children's faces. Do you think they can understand? And we can actually see blank faces because the children cannot actually relate about the feeling whenever it's winter. So they cannot relate how cold and freezing it is whenever it's winter time. So that kind of example is actually what I always tell to our students to think whenever they make or plan about their lessons. Another thing, the second one, is the students acquire in-depth knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes through continuity and consistency across all levels and subjects if we make the curriculum relevant to the learners. Of course, discussions on issues such as disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and information and communication technology are always a part in the enhanced curriculum of the K-12 program. So as early as middle school, senior high school, they're already teaching them some basics on the innovation or technology skills for the students. For our next feature, we have building proficiency through, of course, the use of mother tongue, okay, of the students. So mother tongue based multilingual education. In kindergarten to grade 3, the child's dominant language is used as the language of learning. So when we say dominant language, it's the language being used in the community where it is the language being used by most of the population in the community. Now, the mother tongue is used in instruction. In other words, it's used in teaching the children and learning materials of other learning areas. So we believe that if we use our mother tongue, their mother tongue in teaching, the learners can still retain their ethnic identity, culture, and even heritage and values. Children learn better and are actually more active in class and learn a second language even faster when they are taught in a language that they understand, which is the reason why I keep on telling you the mother tongue of the children are being used in teaching the kindergarten. And not only that, we believe that if we keep on using their mother tongue in teaching, they will become more proficient in their own native language or mother tongue. Thus, if they are proficient in their own mother tongue, based on research, they can also become more proficient in the foreign language or additional language that they will be learning. Okay. The fourth feature of K-12 is ensuring integrated and seamless learning, or we call that one as spiral progression. This one I think is not new to you. So when we say spiral, it's something, from below going up, right? So you can imagine how we can use this spiral progression even in our curriculum. I think Korea has been or had been using this kind of approach in your curriculum. So this is where the basic concepts or general concepts are being learned at the bottom. Okay, and as they go to the higher level, primary and junior high school, more complex and sophisticated version of the basic or general concepts are then rediscovered in the succeeding grade. Okay, So this strengthens their retention and enhances mastery of topics and skills as they are revisited and consolidated time again and again. So what I'm trying to say, for instance, if your topic in teaching them when it comes to grammar, literary piece, okay, or even basic concept in mathematics from elementary until secondary, same topic, but as they go to a higher level, they keep on studying the same subject matter, right? But it becomes more complicated as they go to higher level, the more that they can actually master the concept or idea behind that certain subject matter, which is also the reason why the books or textbooks in the Philippines nowadays are actually based on this spiral approach or spiral progression. So the textbooks from elementary, middle school until middle school are quite connected. It's just that the topic or the simplicity of the subject matter can be seen until it becomes complicated as they go to a higher level. Okay, this approach allows learners to learn topics and skills appropriate to their developmental and cognitive skill. Now, for the last feature of the K to 12 program, we say that it is actually or should be implemented during the time because it nurtures the holistically developed Filipino. So, college and livelihood readiness in the 21st century. Now, after going through kindergarten, the enhanced elementary and junior high school curriculum, and a specialized senior high school program, every K 12 will be ready to go into different paths. And it's up to them if they would like to further their education, employment, or even entrepreneurship. So if they want to go to a higher level, obviously it's actually a good thing because it means that they are very much ready to go into a higher level. Okay, so those are just the 5 features of the education system, the K to 12 program here in the Philippines. Now, just some quick facts that I would like to inform you. In the Philippines, we actually have these departments that handles the education here in the Philippines. So the first one is the Department of Education. They are actually the one in charge of the K to 12 program here in the Philippines. And we also have the Commission on Higher Education, or we say CHED. They are the one in charge of universities and colleges or 4-year courses, including the postgraduates, okay? Master's degree and doctorate degree. And another department is the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. In short, we just call that one as TESDA. Okay, so these department is the one in charge of technical and vocational education institutions and programs in the country. So like vocational programs such as the 6 months program in learning basic computer skills, culinary means cooking, okay? So some of them study cooking, for instance, for 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months, even hairstyling, okay? So those kinds of vocational programs, which are less than 2 years, okay? They are actually under the TESDA department. So I'll repeat, these are the 3 departments that we have handling the education here in the Philippines: Department of Education, Commission on Higher Education, and Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. Now, looking at these departments, how about in Korea? Do you also have separate departments for each of the level in your country? Or do you only have one department for all of them? Okay, what I heard was you only have one department. I'm not sure. Okay, so this one is just for your information. Second one, in the Philippines, we actually have some languages of instruction from kindergarten to grade 3. We actually use mother tongue of the students. And from grades 4 until senior high school, English and Filipino are used as the languages of instruction here in the Philippines because they are our official language. So even actually in the university, we also use Filipino and English since these two are our official language. Now, normally, before the pandemic, the school year for public school here in the Philippines, since we only have 2 seasons, okay, we do not have winter and another, we only have dry and wet season. That's the reason why our academic year is actually straight from June until March. So for the public school, they start from June to March. However, for the non-government schools, the private schools, they used to start from August to May. However, okay, due to COVID-19, the Philippines education actually changed into something new. I think this is not new to you, but it's actually also similar on what happened in your country and other countries too. The Philippines actually shifted to blended learning, which is the usage of module and online learning. And last year, they just started their classes last August 24 in the private schools. And in the public schools, they just started last October 5. Now, in the Philippines, digital education is new, which is the reason why there are still many struggles, many factors, and many problems that teachers and students face. And because of that, the government is trying to solve their problem one by one. Now, in the Philippines, the integration of digital education into teaching is still a complex and, of course, challenging process that goes well beyond introducing digital education in schools. The integration, of course, requires carefully considering within the broader context of school-wide improvement issues, such as, of course, the change of management, professional development, evaluation system, as well as sharing the best practices in using digital technology in teaching. Okay, now in addition to that, a majority of families in the Philippines, of course, especially from the poor and rural communities, cannot, of course, afford paying for their laptop, their computer, their technology, and even their internet, which is the reason why most of them opted to use modules without online classes. So if they have some certain questions, they can call their teachers. Their teachers are on call, just like the doctors. They can call them if some of the concepts or ideas in their modules is not clear. So the teacher can also explain it to them. In addition to that, other families preferred for their children to get lessons online or through regional radio and TV educational broadcasts. This is for the families who have a complete set of desktop and computer and internet in order for them to study online. So if they can afford, they can actually study online. And frankly speaking, since last year, since the pandemic, the students have been out of school since it was suspended in the middle of March. So until now, the learners or children haven't been in schools because the president said that classes should resume only when a COVID-19 vaccine has been made available, fearing classrooms could become infection hotspots. So he did not actually allow the opening of classes, but what he allowed is digital education in the Philippines. This pandemic, as you know, is actually reshaping and changing the educational over the world, not only here in my country, but also in many places. So our government is trying to take this opportunity to reshape the way we teach our children because we believe that this pandemic is still far from over and who knows what other crisis we might still be facing. So we believe that though it's a very laborious task, this is one way for the Philippines to build the school of the future. So, in this lecture, I hope you had a brief overview on how we make or how our education system in the Philippines looks like.